We are live. Welcome, everybody. This is episode number 9 of the Greatest Muley Hunter podcast. I'm your host, Matt Anderson. Joining me today is my good buddy, Tim Boehm, out in Wisconsin. Hi, Tim.
Hey, man. How you doing, bud?
I'm good. How about you, man?
Doing excellent.
Awesome. I known Tim for quite a few years here, and we had a fairly auspicious beginning as knowing each other. So why don't you get into that a little bit, Tim? Tell us how we met.
Sure. So we were both working at a Home Depot here in Wisconsin, and Matt was just this kind of cranky, scary guy in the back that didn't like people. I love people. I'm happy all the time, and that's like Matt's kryptonite. So I was just like, who is this guy, man? I saw him hammer this girl one time because she made a bunch of mistakes and she knew better and she knew better. And Matt just totally called her out on her BS in front of a bunch of people. And I was like, man, the balls on this guy. Like, who is he? And so anyways, I had fooled around with the idea of becoming a hunter. I come from a golf family, so I had no real outdoor experience other than a handful of pond fishing trips and stuff like that. And I don't know what it was. There was just an allure to the outdoors that I just kind of felt a calling to, like, that's something that I need to experience. I need to learn it. Like, I need to start that tradition with myself and hopefully with a family that I'll have someday. And so I was, trying to learn bow hunting on your own can be difficult,
God.
right? Like,
Especially bow hunting. Like
yeah,
just regular hunting, gun hunting,
yeah,
that's
yep,
one whole thing. But
yeah,
like to start from absolute scratch with bow hunting, like talk about balls on
yeah,
this
yeah.
guy. Like
So it started. There was a maintenance guy in my apartment that I was talking to him about fishing or something, and I was telling him how he was talking about hunting, and I was like, "Oh man, so I really wanted to get into that." I'd taken the time to gone through hunter safety, and had never picked it up after that, and it had been about a year and a half since I graduated that. And he's like, "Well, I got this old bow." He's like, "You can just have it." I was like, "Awesome." So he gives me this bow, and I go to the local archery place, and like I keep smashing my arm with the string, and like I can't even hit targets. And I was like, I did archery in gym class, like it wasn't this hard. And so I went 2 or 3 times. Like, I worked in retail, obviously, at Home Depot, so I was going like during the week, and there was this older guy that worked at the counter there at the archery shop. And I was walking out the door, just my head hanging, and he's like, "Come over here." He's like, "Come over here, young man. Let me talk to you. What's going on?" And I was like, I can't figure it out, man. I can't shoot. I can't hit anything. I don't get it. It shouldn't be that hard." And he's like, "Look, come on, I'll go out there with you." So he walks out to the range with me, and I pull back. He's like, "Okay, first off, your arms are way too short for that bow." And I was like, it's 20-year-old, probably like the first compound bow ever that has like no adjustments. There's
yeah.
no brand name on it or
Yeah,
anything.
no.
It's like spray painted. He's like, "Here," he's like, "Shoot mine." I was like, "All right." So, cause he was a littler guy like me and had shorter arms, so it had a more appropriate draw length. And, so I go and, I go on the range. The first thing I do is fling an arrow like into the ground and shatter this arrow. He's like, "Ooh." I was like, "How much was that arrow?" He's like, "That was a $40 arrow." I was like, "What? I didn't even pay for this bow. Like, now I gotta buy this guy a $40 arrow." I was like, "I haven't even been in the wood. This is dumb." Like, so fast forward like a couple months later, and our local Gander Mountain was getting ready to move to a new location. So my girlfriend and I, who's now my wife, we're just walking around, and I was looking for deals on fish and stuff or whatever. And like behind a bunch of tackle boxes was this bow that I'm guessing somebody was like trying to hide, because what happens with those clearance sales is the longer they go on, the cheaper stuff gets, right? Because they don't want to move it. So I'm guessing somebody was trying to hide this thing. It was an old Fred Bear TRX 400. And it was down to like $75 or something at the time, or $125. But when I took it up the register, because of the it was so far into the clearance sale, it was like $75. So
Yeah.
bought that.
Awesome.
I got it tuned to my size or whatever,
Yeah.
and started shooting. So then something that I've learned, there's two things in Wisconsin: hunting camp and softball teams, which everybody tells you they have a spot for you until it's time for season. Then there's no spots. And, well, Uncle Louie's like third cousin flew in, like, so we've got to take him to camp. So that was the last bunk, man. We can't take you this year. So after a lot of failed invites and just life happening, I just wasn't getting out there. So I was complaining about it, like in the break room, to somebody who was just talking about a successful hunting trip. And Montana here was just like, "Oh man, you want to get into hunting?" And I was like, "Yeah, what are you gonna like? What's your beef, man?" Because at this point I'm not his friend yet. So I figure he's gonna crack on me or something. But we end up having a conversation. It was only a couple days later. I think we were in the woods over there in the Kettle Moraine.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It's
that's how it started.
one of those things that, like, once you find that common ground with somebody, even if you don't have any experience, like, still just getting out into the woods, like getting out and trying, and like I am not a good bow hunter. Like, the only thing I've ever killed with my bow is a raccoon. But you still, all the principles are the same. It's just a much, much tighter window. And public land hunting in Wisconsin, especially, is like, it's so, so hard to hunt. Like, public land hunting in Montana is one thing, but public land hunting in Wisconsin is a whole other thing. And so Tim and I started going out, and we'd go out every chance we get, and it's not easy. He's juggling a family. We're both working, crazy. Your schedule was more crazy than mine. Mine was always a set schedule, but
Yeah.
um, trying to find time to get out in the woods and, like, just figure it out. Like, I was new to hunting in Wisconsin, and I was in the same situation. Like, I didn't have anybody to go hunting with. I didn't have anybody that was going to take me to hunting camp with them, because I wasn't related to anybody. There are people in my wife's family that hunt, but I don't like my wife's family very much. So, it's not like I'm gonna just go hunting with them,
Yeah.
or anything. But
We did
so,
hunt that one time by your father-in-law's place though.
oh
That was one of my
man,
birthday hunts,
yeah.
which is Thanksgiving this year, and 2 days is my
Yeah,
birthday.
that's
Yep.
right.
So I
Yeah.
do miss my birthday hunts with you, buddy. It's not the
Yeah, I
same,
know. I
but
know. It's
it
I
is
I
what it
feel you,
is.
pal.
Is what it is. Yep.
Yep.
But yeah, that was where we had to walk along those crazy railroad tracks, and
Oh
then
yeah. Yep.
there was that guy like duck hunting in the pond. And didn't your dad like call the cops on him or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I
It
don't
was
remember. I mean, I
yeah.
remember the day, but I don't remember
Uh,
specifics. But
yeah.
yeah, man, it's, yeah, my father-in-law had like 6 acres on a river, so we were trying to hook something up, and just never ever actually happened. And you know Tim is still searching for that elusive
I
first
keep
deer.
yep. So I keep telling everybody like doe or buck, it doesn't matter. I'm getting it shoulder mounted, and
Yep.
that is going to be the proudest trophy of my life. In fact, I was out today for a couple hours, and so I'm trying a new method this year. So I've been starting to research public land hunting a little bit more, and I've talked to some guys, and it's almost like I think of you a little bit, because it's almost like a spot and stalk, where they're not going in and setting up and brushing in and sitting there for 3 hours waiting for a buck or a deer to walk by. It's
Yeah.
more, you go in and you're physically hunting the deer. And I'll say this, I mean, if I get one deer sighting a year, I'm normally ecstatic. I've
Yeah.
hunted 3 times so far this year, and I've seen deer both times through this method. So
Wow.
I feel like it's starting to work.
Yeah.
But yeah, tonight I was chasing one around. I never got eyes on it, but I know that, I mean, luckily we've had a lot of rain, so
Yeah.
its tracks, like, I mean, I was hot on this thing.
That's
No
awesome.
lie. I get in my pickup. I turn around. So if you remember that little, like, 15-acre chunk that butted up to the neighborhood that was like closer to my house than that 100-acre chunk we always hunted.
Yep.
So I was hunting that. So Wisconsin has this new app out. It's amazing, and it actually shows you where all the public land is at, and
Yeah.
it's live. It's like live, so it actually shows me where I'm at in the piece while I'm
Sure.
in this app. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But what I didn't know is that the chunk across the street from it is also public land as well. It's not marked at all except on this
Sure.
app. So as I'm pulling out, I noticed down in this valley, there's 3 doe. So I'm staring at these doe like, okay, I'm totally going to set up there tomorrow night because I'm going tomorrow again.
Yeah.
And as I look up, there's a buck right in front of my pickup truck that had just jumped out of where I was hunting. So
Oh
of
my
course, I'm
gosh.
telling myself that's
Yeah.
the deer I was hunting all day because
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah. Yeah.
beautiful little it was a 6
Yeah.
point, but it actually had a
Sure.
really tall, narrow rack, which it
Nice.
looked really cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, so
That's
to
awesome.
be a kill-less bow hunter, that was big. That was like, oh
That's
my
awesome,
gosh,
man.
like
That's
that
huge.
happened.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
there's a gentleman in my Bible study that has some land pretty close here to us in Johnson Creek, and he's
Hmm.
been talking about like, if you don't get one, let me know in December. You can come out and shoot a doe. So I
Sure.
may take him up on that offer.
Heck
He's a pretty
yeah.
reliable guy, so I
Yeah.
feel comfortable that invitation is a real invitation. So
Yeah. That's
hopefully this
awesome.
is the year I break the curse, and if it
Ooh, I
is,
hope so.
I'm gonna have to make another guest appearance on one of your other
Yeah,
episodes
heck
because
yeah,
I'd love
man.
to
Yeah.
share that story. But
Oh, that's
you know,
awesome.
I had a couple people ask me recently, like, "Are you gonna hunt again this year?" And absolutely, I am. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like at this point, I don't care if it takes me 20 years to put
No,
an
for
arrow in something.
sure.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah, yep.
No, I love your perseverance, man, especially
Thanks, man.
coming from a non-hunting background. Like that's awesome to see, and knowing that I was able to help foster that to a certain degree, and you know
Yeah.
teach you a few things about shooting, and we shot together quite a bit, and we shot
Hmm.
together a lot more than we hunted together even, and you
Yeah,
know um that was always really fun, and it's
it was. Good memories of those. Yeah, the time I, and Jerome went out to that public archery park in Tosa, and I mean,
yeah.
we flung arrows. My arm was so sore, but we had so
Yeah.
much fun that day.
Yeah, we were
And in the
shooting
end,
at like 55, 60 yards across the parking lot all the way
yep.
into the
Oh
It
man,
was
yeah,
awesome. It was a good
it
time.
was. And in the end, I mean, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
As leading up to this conversation, I was thinking about our hunts and all the freezing cold hunts where I'd be like, "Oh man, I'm not seeing anything," and you text back like, "Yeah, I walked back to my pickup an hour ago," and I was like, "What?" You jerk. Like, I can't feel my hands, and you've been sitting in your
You're
car.
doing great, Tim. You're doing great.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, but
Yeah.
all the meals we shared afterwards, and
Yeah.
just all the good conversations we had, the drive to and fro, or
Yeah.
when we'd be sitting in the same blind texting each
Yeah.
other as to not scare off the no deer that were
Yeah,
around us.
exactly. Oh man.
Oh, the stone. You remember
Yeah.
the day we were in the Kettle Moraine? It was our first year hunting together, and you had me tucked in some valley, and those group of stone, and we were a good like hour hike
We were
into
a
this,
ways,
like
ways back in there.
nowhere, like there isn't like a hiking trail. This isn't like a place people are gonna go, and
Nope.
there's these like 4 skater kids smoking weed like in the middle of the woods. Like, oh my
Just talking
goodness.
loudly and coming
Yeah.
through.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, that was so funny.
Oh yeah.
It's like, are you,
That's
are you, s-
ah,
what? What the
yeah.
fuck? That is so ridiculous.
It just blows my mind. That's one of the things that like there's almost, I think, a creepiness factor to public land hunting because there
Yeah,
are so many unknowns. I mean, in fact, I think your dad was with. It was that time you and your father came over for the Packer game. We barbecued, we smoked some ribs, ate, and then we went out that afternoon. And there was a bunch of guys drunk off their tail with pistols walking
yeah,
around just
yeah,
shooting tree. Like
yeah,
I my buddy Sean was with us, and he
Yeah,
texted like, "I'm walking back to my car, like a bullet
yeah,
just whizzed by my deer blind. Like this is
yeah,
insane. How do you guys hunt public land?" Or like, that's all we got, man.
yeah. No, I
We
know.
just
Like
stay low, I guess.
it's such a rich man's game these days. Like any sort of private land hunting, like the leases, the hunting leases, even like a 20-acre piece, you're looking at $1,500 to lease it for a season, and that's just that's so ridiculous. That's
Yeah,
so ridiculous. So all the people that are in a similar situation to us, that don't have that kind of money to spend on a lease, and we're stuck. We're not gonna not hunt, but
yep,
so
exactly.
everybody, and like gun hunting Wisconsin, like there's a 0% chance that I would ever do that because man, that is just an insane thing. Like there are way
Yeah,
too many people in those woods and people that don't know what they're doing and have only handled their gun one time and have probably been drinking. And man,
yeah.
that's a scary situation, especially
Well, it
coming
is, and
from like, a public land in Montana where, you see people, but not like that. And you once you get off the roads, you're not going to see many people at all, and you get back into some areas, and you, it doesn't take very long before you're in places where nobody else is, and you got hundreds of square miles of public land that it's there's not a lot of deer, but there's deer. And um, if you know how to hunt it and when and where and how, and it's it can be a really I mean, it's just a completely different thing than
yeah.
Wisconsin. So
Yeah, I traditionally once gun season hits, which our deer gun season started last weekend. I normally don't hunt it, but there aren't a lot of hunters on this little piece. I don't go to the big. I hunt all public land. I normally hunt about 130-acre marsh, but there's this 15-acre chunk that we've discovered that's public, and not too many gun hunters go back there. So I am hunting that this year just because I've had some time off from work and should be in the middle of the rut, and it's just been good weather. So figured,
yeah,
hey, when you got a couple hours, just go out there and the other neat thing about this kind of mobile hunting method is I'm really even on the 120-acre chunk that I've hunted for years, I've started to find connecting routes, deer paths, deer bedding areas that I've never discovered before because I'm walking for sometimes 2 or 3 hours at a
yeah,
time.
yep,
And you're really able to kind of get off that beaten path, so to speak, and
yeah,
discover some areas where hopefully are going to come to fruition when the time and the wind is right. Which
yeah,
are other things you start to pick up. I remember my first couple of years going in. I didn't think about the wind. I didn't think about deer travel. I was like, "Oh, this spot looks like what I saw on TV. I'm sure there's a deer going to come through here,"
yeah,
and then obviously as you do it more and more and more, you keep learning from your mistakes. And
yep,
I think it was about it. It had to be the last year before you left. We were in the rut, and I was sitting the inlet that came in from the river where we spent 2 hours that one day waiting for the sun to rise, and it
yeah.
turned out it was a stump that I thought was the biggest deer ever. Yeah.
Yep,
um,
yep,
still one of my all-time favorite spots to hunt, which is
yeah,
probably one of my other detriments up until this season. Is I
yeah,
found 3 or 4 spots. I would always go hunt those 3 or 4 spots because it's what I was comfortable with.
yeah,
I knew I could get out of the chunk without
yeah.
getting lost, like we did that one Friday night, to the
Oh
point
man,
my wife was ready to
oh,
call the police
that
because we
was
were like two
bad.
and a half hours late.
Yeah,
And what's funny is, so I've walked that perimeter of that field we were lost in, and it was so small. Like we
yeah.
had to have just been
I'm
walking in
sure. Yeah,
circles.
it was just that grass. Those weeds were so
Oh
damn tall. We couldn't
yeah,
get any sort of
no,
bearing. And
no,
man, it's
yeah,
phew, yeah. With
yep,
like the tracking apps that you have now, like we have, I use Onyx for hunting in Montana, and man, like it's such a game changer in terms of like knowing where you are at all times and understanding, what's public and what's private and who owns what
hmm
and all the connecting pieces. And man, it's such an absolute game changer. And there's a lot of places, that are not marked, and they're or marked improperly, that the ranchers or whatever, like, they just mark stuff as private even though they're like public touches it in places. And um you know without having that sort of ability to know exactly where you are, like GPS location, and the tracking app on the map is like, man, it's such an absolute game changer. So back then, that we didn't have anything like that, and we're just trying to fumble fuck our way through the dark to get back to where we thought we were. And man, that was a
Oh yeah,
struggle.
yeah. It's a good way to put it. A
Yep.
struggle. Yes. Oh
But
man.
ultimately, like, that's a huge part of the hunt, is the struggle. Like,
Mhm.
the struggle, you putting yourself out there against the elements, and putting yourself in a situation that is not comfortable and not ideal, and still trying to figure out a way to make it all work. And even if you don't get a deer, like, being successful is getting out alive. Like, I mean, that's what being successful is. So if you get a deer, that's just icing on the cake. So it's but when it actually happens, like when you get your first buck, man, after all these years of toiling and kind of going through all the stuff, like, man, it's gonna mean the absolute world to you. I guarantee it. Like,
That's what everybody keeps saying. No,
and I
yeah,
mean, it's one of those
it
things,
does.
like, yes, you've heard it 100 times, but like,
Yeah,
man, it's
yeah. No, I know. I mean, I, the excitement that I felt, the two most exciting hunts that I've ever had were the first time I saw a deer in the field, which was a doe about the size of a Labrador. That was like the smallest doe. I was like, is that really even a deer? It's so small, but
yeah,
still, I mean, I remember everything about that hunt. Like,
yep,
it was just one of those moments where you're like, okay, I like it clicked. Like maybe there had been some doubt before I saw that deer. Like, I think we were in like year 3, and I
yeah.
was like, all right, I'm probably gonna need to sell this gear and just bowl or
Move
something.
on.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and then you see that first deer, and like it doesn't run away right away. Like it doesn't know you're there.
Yeah,
I mean, it was. I talked about that the rest of that season. It was like I had shot a trophy buck. Like I
yep,
couldn't believe I'd stared at this doe for 15 minutes and had no clue I was there. I couldn't get a shot at it. Even if I had, I don't think I would have shot it. I mean, it was
yeah,
that small, but
yeah, yeah,
it was still one of those experiences. And then the second one was the first time I saw a buck, which was absolutely, like, I shook, I think, for 2 days straight after that. I mean, and that thing was like 5 yards from me. I'm sitting no blind. I stopped hunting from a blind 4 years ago.
yeah.
I was actually on a flight back from Colorado for work, and I was talking to a general. He pulled out a book about like the history of deer science or something. And I was like, that's how this plane ride's gonna go. Here we go. So great,
Yep,
great guy, and had built this private hunting mecca. And I mean, it was like 70 acres, but I mean, he'd had it
yeah,
for like 30 years. And I mean, everything was engineered exactly how, their bedding area, their feeding area, they had a play area, he called it, where nobody was allowed to hunt. That was their sanctuary there. And
yep,
I mean, just a great guy. And he's like, he gave me a couple of really good tips. And one of them was like, man, stop hunting from a blind. Like, these deer are smart enough. They know that piece of property. If it's not going to sit there for 4 or 5 days, they're going to get spooked by it
yeah,
9 times out of 10.
yeah,
So I ditched the blind. I just sit there in the stool. I brush myself in, and it was at this trailhead where like 4 or 5 trails kind of come together. It was during the rut, so it was like I think 1:30 in the afternoon, and I hear something, and I'm like, oh, it's probably a gigantic squirrel, like everything else that I hear. And man, we almost need a
Squirrels are
whole
the damn
podcast
worst.
just to talk about all my squirrel stories, because I got a lot of those.
Yep,
And
yep.
So it's coming along, and I'm not taking it too seriously. Like, I mean, there's times that I think the wind blowing is a deer because like
Yeah.
it's so still and quiet, you know, and then
Yeah.
like trees start rattling, you're like, well, what is that?
And
It's a
you're
tree.
so keyed in. You're so
Yeah.
keyed in. Yeah.
Yep. But and then all of a sudden I'm looking through, I've got three kind of shooting lanes from where I'm sitting, and I'm looking through the one to the north, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that is actually a deer. And I was like, not only is it a deer, like it has like there's antlers. It's an actual buck, which I'd never seen a buck other than what I thought I'd seen in the dark, either walking in or walking out,
Yeah.
running away from me.
Yeah.
And so it stops, and it's, you know, rubbing against the bush, kind of walking around, and I'm like freaking out. This is like 5 yards from me, so I'm
Yeah.
smart enough to get my bow up, and I go into draw, and he walks right into the shooting lane, looks at me, and I freeze. I can't even think about putting my pin on him, and he snorts and then runs off into the brush, and then
Uh-huh.
does this thing where he stomps and scrapes and makes all kinds of a ruckus, and that lasted for another few minutes. And I mean, I just greatest hunt of my life to date, because to
Yep.
me that
That's
encounter was just
awesome.
that fuels the fire for the next 5 years. And
For sure.
oh man,
Yep.
yep,
No, that's awesome, dude. Like,
yeah.
and like it's the same for me. Like I can picture every buck that I've ever killed. Like, I can picture everything about every single hunt, and obviously I've had much more experience than you, and I've killed, you know, obviously many, 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 many more deer than you have even seen while hunting. And I mean, that's just, the difference in Montana and Wisconsin is just, there's
Yeah,
just no comparison in terms of where we hunt, you know, where
yeah,
I hunt in Montana and where you hunt in Wisconsin. Like there's just no comparison. So
yeah.
um but it's so funny, like coming from Montana and going to Wisconsin, you hunt a 15-acre piece of property. Like that's, even like 130 acres, like that's a pretty big chunk. And like, man, where we go in Montana, like if it isn't at least like 2 square miles, like there's not really a whole lot of point even in going.
Oh my
I mean, that's
goodness.
just, that's the difference. Like
Yeah.
I think I was looking the other day, and just national forest land, not including BLM and state land that's public hunting, where we are in Montana, is like almost 700 square miles of public
Wow.
land.
Holy cow.
Mhm. Mhm.
Man. Well, that I mean, part of it is the land for sure, and part of it is time and dedication.
Oh,
You
for
know, I
sure.
don't. You know, I'm by no means the guy that is like, okay, I'm getting up at 4:30 and I'm gonna go hunt for 3 hours before work, and then I'm gonna
Yeah.
go into work. I'm not that guy, you know, and
No.
that's probably one of the other reasons why I haven't shot a deer yet. I mean,
Sure.
there are those guys that get out and get it done on public land that don't, you
Yep.
know, they've got way better stories than me, and they put in the time and put in the work to get that done.
Yep.
So, you know,
And more
that
power to them.
that is
I
exactly. Yep.
mean, it's
Yeah,
whatever. Like I
it
don't
is.
the way people make hunting a competition is so silly. Just like
Yeah.
just appreciate hunting. Just appreciate it for what it is, man. Like
Yeah.
be happy for people. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
how or what or when or who or whatever. Like just appreciate the fact that people are doing it. They're getting out and doing it on their own terms. Like your
Yeah.
your requirements are different than my requirements, and
Yeah.
it's silly to project kind of that sort of expectation. Like every person is different, every single hunt is different, every area is different, every experience level is different. So to have the same expectations for everybody is just silly. It's
Mhm.
just a silly nonsensical way of looking at things. So
Yeah.
just appreciate hunting. I love the fact that you're still out there hunting, man. Like that just it makes me so happy, and I wish I could be out there with you because boy, we
Yeah,
had some really fun times. Like
we did.
toiling
We did.
away together. Toiling away together is a very like
Yeah,
there's such a bond building thing that happens when you toil away together.
yeah,
Like our friendship, boy, we grew really close in a pretty short amount of time just over this one thing, and
yeah.
that kind of
It just
shaped.
expands. Yeah, yeah. It just grows from that. That's the foundation that a really, what I expect to be a lifelong friendship, grows
Certainly.
on. I mean, here you're how many years out west, and we still get I still get the random text of, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And
Yeah.
I send them to you, and I
Yeah.
don't do that to many people at all. I
Yeah.
mean, you change jobs, you move, you do all these things. I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna stay in touch. You don't stay in touch with
No.
those people, and
No, it's
Montana's
hard.
been that one guy where it's just always like he's just the first one I think of to text when things go on, and
Yeah.
I tell stories of my buddy Montana, my hunting partner, still to this day, and I hunt by myself now.
Yeah.
I hunted a couple times with one of my other buddies, but other than that, I hunt by myself now, and
Yeah.
that's something my brother-in-law was going to get into it, but it didn't quite work out. Um, but it's definitely different to go from hunting with a really close friend and spending that time together to being by yourself.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the same, but I think I'm also a lot pickier about who I want to go out into the woods with and things like
Yeah.
that.
For sure.
Because I've obviously been spoiled being introduced to the deer woods with you, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that, and maybe I'm just I don't know. I went duck hunting with. I know Joe's been on the show.
Yeah.
I went duck hunting with Joe, and I think it's still the only time you went duck hunting and never shot at anything. So
Yeah.
I don't
That's
know.
fine.
Maybe,
We went 0-2 duck hunting, he and I. So, I mean, it's one of those things. Like
yeah, yeah.
Joe is quite a character, and
Indeed,
he's
great guy to spend time with in the
for
field for sure.
sure, for sure. He's
Yeah,
man, he's such a such a crazy dude, and
yes.
you just never ever know what's gonna happen with Joe. So, which
No,
is kind of
no.
a fun thing because
Yeah,
there's no getting stale with Joe because
yeah.
who
No,
knows.
who knows what's gonna happen?
Shout out to Joe
Yeah.
Switalski. Hey
Joe
bud.
Switalski. Hey man, glad glad I didn't maim you that year at Deer Fest as I almost ended your life
Yep.
with a Euro mount.
Yeah, you dropped
Uh,
my
a
dad's
whole wall
giant 5 point.
full of
Well,
pounds.
it was the big 5 point actually fell on his head, but there were a
That's
few
right.
that
That's right.
fell. But it was
Oh
the
man.
the big 5 point that would have done the most damage. But and it probably did some damage, but Joe's a little
Right.
crazy, so it's hard to tell.
Exactly. Yeah. Just
There's
blends
probably
in.
some TBI, but no visual.
Nope. Oh man. Good
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so I just got
Mm.
back from my Montana trip this
Yeah.
year, and man, talk about toiling. It was a tough hunt. Let me tell you, like every year we go out and I always tell, like this year I had my buddy Sean from Missouri and his friend Tim came out, and it's the first time I'd ever met Sean in person, and we got hooked up probably 6-7 years ago through Joe, through that podcast, the South Pond Outdoors podcast, and that's how I got hooked up with Vortex and all
Oh,
of that
nice.
stuff. So it's awesome. Like the tags are very expensive for non-residents. Like it's $650 for a deer tag. um so there's some pressure, there's some pressure there. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
and I've been trying to get Sean out here hunting for 5 or 6 years. We've been trying to get it all set up, and it finally happened this year. Um And I always tell people, like, be prepared for, you know 60, 70 degrees all the way down to minus 20, because you just never know what Montana is going to bring this time of year. Like, it can be it can be unbelievable. And a few years ago when I had Jerome out there the first year, it was like 67 degrees that first day, and then 2 days later it was 15 below zero, and everything froze, and we had to leave camp because you just couldn't even warm water up enough to like have actual water. So,
Oh my
just
goodness.
shut everything down. Um so I'm like, all right, so we just got to hope that the worst case scenario doesn't happen, because which is rain. If it rains in that country, you just can't get anywhere. You can't get anywhere. So, of course, what happened the first 2 days we were there? Rained constantly. And, like, it doesn't rain constantly in Montana. Like, storms roll through. Like, they go through, they'll be there, they'll dump a bunch of rain in a short amount of time, and then they're gone. It rained steady for 2 days.
Oh
And I'm
man.
like, God damn it. So it's like 50 degrees and rain, and that is the worst possible scenario that you can have for hunting there. So
Oh,
we were very, very restricted in where we could go, where we could get to, because the mud in that country, all the 2-track roads just turn to mud bowls, and you just can't drive on it. Like, you can have the most jacked up truck with gigantic mud tires, and you will just sink in and spin your tires, and there you will sit. Like, you just can't go. You can't go anywhere.
yeah.
So, there are places where you can walk in from the highway or walk in from a gravel county road, and so we're doing these hunts, and we're seeing a lot of deer. We're seeing a lot like that first morning, the first hunt, we saw 21 deer, and we
Whoa.
saw one little 2-point, and that was it. Like, the rest were does and fawns. And, like, this time of year, last year, we saw bucks with every group of does that we saw. We saw bucks traveling all over the place. There were no bucks with does. We didn't see a single buck with a doe until the Thursday of the hunt. We started Saturday, and Thursday we finally saw a buck with does. Like, the rut just hasn't kicked in, or hadn't kicked in, at that point.
Sure.
And so, had the rut been going on, it wouldn't have been a big deal that we couldn't get into some of these places, because the bucks would be traveling. So it wouldn't matter. Like, you're not, like, you're limited in where you can go, but it doesn't matter if the bucks are traveling looking for hot does. Well, the bucks weren't traveling, and we couldn't get anywhere. So it was like, we're seeing does and does and does and does, and we're just not seeing any damn bucks. And we did a big hunt on Tuesday morning, and went back into this area, and we're walking in, and all of a sudden there's a really nice buck just standing up on this big bench with these giant sandstone rocks around it, and just, perfectly, like, skyline there on a little bench. Not the ultimate skyline, but like one closer from the furthest ridge, it was
Mhm.
over 400 yards away. And
Oh wow.
so one of the Missouri guys, Tim, he had the first shot. So, we're all standing there, and he gets down, and one of the other guys is like, okay, it's 416 yards. And Tim's just like, just didn't even know what to do. And he shot and just missed him. And then he was gone. He was out of sight, and we never saw him again.
Oh
Um,
man.
but it was one of those things, like, like, you're not prepared for that kind of distance. Like, that's a long ways, 416 yards. And so, after all the fact, like, we pulled up he pulled up his phone and he looked up that load, and he's like, "Well, my bullet would drop 24 inches at 416 yards." And so,
Oh my
I mean, it would just be
goodness.
like, real lucky to have that happen, and but he was a good buck. He was probably a 23-inch wide, good, nice, perfect 4 point, like exactly what we were looking for. Like, really
Hmm.
nice dark antlers and very symmetrical, just a really pretty buck, and would have been perfect, but that's the way it goes, man. Like, and then that was
Yeah.
the biggest buck that we saw the whole week, and um it finally got cold. Wednesday, Tuesday afternoon, it was like 60 degrees and rain. So we
Ugh.
so we drove into my hometown and went and visited a few people, and because I knew, the hunting was just going to be terrible, so we might as well get these visits out of the way. And so we're driving through town, and there's a resident population of mule deer in town that, like, we drove from one end of town to the other and probably saw 80 deer,
Oh
like,
my goodness.
just out, out in people's yards, in parks, like, and they were rutting hard. Like, the bucks were on those does so hard, but there's no pressure because it's in town. So, they're, and it's, 70 miles from where we were hunting. So it's, they're on a completely different schedule from the town deer. So it's a whole other thing. But
Yeah.
I mean, we're like driving through, and there's like a buck hot on a doe, like right next to us, 20 feet away, and just
Oh
just
man.
funny. Like, these guys are just like, "What is this?" I'm like, this is where I grew up,
Oh
guys. And
man.
so then the next day it got cold, and so we because it got cold, we were able to drive into a really good area that we hadn't been able to, and I sent these guys on a big hike because I had jacked up my heels really bad on that hunt that we did that Tuesday morning. We did like probably a 7 mile loop, and
Oh.
by the time we got back to the pickup, my heels were just like hamburger basically from
Mm.
my boots, and that was not good. So Wednesday I could barely walk. Like, I was not able to
Jeez.
do much of anything, and um so I sent them on a hunt, and back up in where I killed that my biggest buck 2 years ago. Um, the same exact hunt that we were on, and it was snowing really, really pretty hard and blowing, and they couldn't see very far, and they were way up high in some country, and they ended up going through probably a 5-6 mile hike and didn't see a deer. I saw some, like, I was down in the low country and kind of just hunting slow, and uh, just as fast as I could go with my heels, which was not fast at all. So I
Yeah.
didn't want to like slow them down or anything, by whatever. So they were hunting. I was hunting below them, quite a ways below them, and I saw some deer, and then I ended up finding my biggest shed antler that I've ever found, which was pretty awesome. So I'll
Very nice.
show you a picture here real quick. That's pretty rad, maybe. um, of course, I haven't done this in a minute here. Give me 1 second here. So there's a little bit of snow, like a couple inches of snow on the ground, and I'm not quite sure how I saw this, which you will see here shortly, because it's kind of crazy.
And was this on Wednesday or Thursday?
This was on Wednesday.
Okay. How long were you guys at camp for this year?
Saturday to Saturday. I left at like 6 a.m. on Saturday. At the end.
Nice.
All right, here we go. Yeah, Reggie got there. My buddy Reggie got there a little early and had camp all set up, and the Missouri guys pulled in a few hours before I got there on Saturday, so like early Saturday afternoon, and they brought a camper, and so they got that all set up, and then I got in, and we had dinner that first night, and the awesome thing about bringing those Missouri guys in is they brought some unbelievable Kansas City barbecue with them that
Oh, nice.
was so good, man. Like best food hunt on this trip ever. Like it was so good. It's so good. So here's what I saw when I found this shed.
I see nothing.
Uh-huh. Yep. And so
Wow. Did you step on it, or how did
no,
you know it was
I
there?
was probably 20 feet away from it.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Just a really nice buck.
Man,
He's
oh
got this
man.
cool little flyer on the back. He's got a regular eye guard and then a cool little flyer on the backside. And he'd have been about a 26-inch buck, like a really nice
Yeah.
buck. That you're
Man, oh man.
exactly what you're looking for, but
Oops.
pretty cool find anyway, and especially under those conditions I was like, I don't even know how I found this, like this is ridiculous.
Oh, that'll look nice on the wall with one of your antler hooks for sure,
Yep,
man.
exactly. Yeah, I'm
Maybe
gonna.
a table mount. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I think I'm gonna send it off and have a guy. There's a guy that does really, really, really nice antler restoration with sheds, and
Hmm.
so I'm gonna have him get it all nice and colored up and filling on.
Very
It's got
cool.
it's got a little crack or some cracking. It's probably a year old anyway.
Sure.
So a little bleached out and whatever. So he'll put some color back in it, and it'll look really
Nice.
nice. And then I'll put it on the wall with one of my horn hangers, and that'll be pretty sweet. But
Very cool.
yeah,
Nice.
so that
All
was
right, so you
cool.
got to tell me the Missouri boys. How did they do? Did they put something down?
Boy, they so that was Wednesday. We hunted hard all day Wednesday and did a couple hunts that were just like, man, this is like we can actually get somewhere. And we saw a bunch of deer too, like later that afternoon, and just no bucks. We just weren't seeing any bucks, and man, that sucks. So the next morning it was gonna freeze hard that night. It was gonna, because it was below zero or below freezing all day Wednesday, and then Thursday morning was gonna be cold, and then by like 10 o'clock it was gonna get above freezing, and then that was gonna be it for freezing temperatures. And I'm like, all right, so there's one place
Mhm.
that we can we can drive all the way down into this place and then pretty much turn around and drive out, and that's going to be what we have time for. And I bet you if we get down to the end of the road, there's going to be a bunch of deer, because nobody's going to be stupid enough to go into here with the road and weather conditions like it is, and
Mhm.
um so I'm like, I bet you we'll drive it down there, and we'll see something at least, and hopefully shoot something. And we've done this hunt quite a few times, and it
Yeah.
it has often paid dividends. But it's one of those things, like if the roads are bad, you can't get out of there. You can get down there, no problem, but you cannot get out. So
Oh, jeez.
A little bit of a risk, but day 5 of, a 6-day hunt, like we're kind of down to the damn wire here. And so
It's time to get a
like,
little risky.
yep.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is
Hmm.
our we got a very small window of opportunity here. And the Missouri guys, they're upbeat and they're, trying to keep a good game face, and I'm like, I'm just fucking pulling my hair out, like, god damn it, we can't get anywhere. We can't there's the bucks aren't running, like we can't get anywhere. We're putting on miles and miles and miles, and we're just not seeing any bucks. And it's like, as the guide in that situation, like, it gives me such an appreciation for what my dad did every single year, like with getting all of us out and getting us all deer every single year. And, under just absurd conditions, I'm sure there were many years like this where just nothing worked and everything was, just absurd. And he still managed to persevere to such an extent that, I mean, we all shot deer, and he continued killing bucks every single year forever. And
Hmm.
like, man, it gives you a whole different appreciation when you're responsible, especially when you have, like, two tags that were $650 a piece, and these guys drove
Yeah.
1,000 miles from Kansas City to come hunt with you. And they're like, no, 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 no pressure, no pressure. I'm like, yeah, well, you say that, but here I am under all this pressure that I've self-imposed. And just one of those things. Like, so
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, so let's do this. Let's get up early. We'll drive. There's this road that goes down this gigantic ridge that kind of splits the country, and then way off the end of it, it drops down into this really gnarly country. And that's where we were headed. But it's like, probably 10 miles down this giant divide, um and then down into that creek. And it's it's a pretty rugged country, and it's all national forest, so we could hunt the whole way. And
Hmm.
um I figured we'd see people up on top because it's fairly easy to get around on top, but nobody's stupid enough to drop off into the bottom like we were. And sure
Yeah.
enough, there's snow on the road, and you can tell everybody just got to the edge of where the drop off starts, and just nobody went down it. And I'm like, this is perfect. This is gonna be awesome. And like, we
Yeah.
dropped off, and right away we started seeing deer. We saw deer just right away, bunch of does, and
Nice.
does over here. Like, we're just, everywhere we're looking, there's just deer moving. And I'm like, all right, this is awesome. Like, let's spot some bucks now. Let's do this.
Yeah.
We got 4 buck tags here, so let's see what we can do. And um, so we go down, and we get all the way down to the bottom of this big creek, and there's a wall tent just set up right there. And but so there's, like, on the bottom of that country is all private land. So you used to be able to drive out the bottom, no problem, but they shut that down years ago. There's like a lock on the gate and everything, and so you just can't drive it. But if you know them, you can drive in from the bottom, and it's no big deal.
Hmm.
So whoever had the camp knew the rancher at the bottom, obviously, but nobody'd been in there for several days. It looked like no fresh tracks or anything. And um, so we're looking at this tent, and it's like, you know 50 feet off the road. And I look up, and well, one of the Missouri guys is like, oh, deer, 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 like right next to this tent, basically just across the road from this tent. And I'm like, all right. So we all bailed out, and um there was a little buck and a bunch of does, and I'm like, all right, well, here we go. Like,
Yeah.
and everybody's just kind of like, both Missouri guys are just kind of standing there. I'm like, dude, we gotta
Shoot
shoot.
it.
Like, let's
It's not
shoot.
gonna just fall over because it's scared.
So I'm like, fine, I'm shooting it. Like, so I shot, and I missed him, and then shot again and dropped him. I mean, he was only like 100 yards away and kind of
Yeah.
walking away. And but I mean, it was like, and both Missouri guys didn't even pull the trigger. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, Well,
Oh man.
Sean was like, "Well, I didn't want to shoot with my rifle right next to your ear." I'm like, "Well, don't
Yeah.
don't worry about it. Like,
Yeah. Yep.
just shoot the damn deer." Like,
Oh
and
man.
then Tim could never get him in his scope, so it was like, trees and stuff in the way, and
Sure.
like, so we walked up this 100 yards, and he was deader than hell, and got up there, and I mean he dropped instantly and was just
Yeah.
stone dead, like as fast and as clean a kill as you could ever imagine, and ended up hitting him right at the base of the head, and like
Oh
broke his
wow.
neck, and just
Yeah.
I mean he instantly died, and that was didn't
That
ruin
was
any
it.
of the meat. And so
Nice.
I field dressed him right away and took a couple pictures, and then the Missouri guys just grabbed onto him and drug him right down the hill, and because it was just a nice 100-yard downhill drag to the road, and that was it. So basically, like, it ended up being like that part of it was like the easiest pack out that exists, basically.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Which that's okay every once in a while.
Heck yeah,
I've
absolutely.
had some terrible ones, so
Well,
you
man.
know.
And then was that the remainder of the day then?
No, we tried some other stuff, but we got out just in time, basically. Like, we got out, and it was funny. They were like, "So we thought we knew what rough roads were, but then you showed us what rough roads were."
Oh man.
Like, yeah, it got a little western there. That's
Got
that's
a
always that's
got a
always kind
little
of
western.
what
I
we
like
termed
that.
that over the years. So nice little
Oh
buck. I
man.
mean, he's a 3x4
Yeah, absolutely.
with eye guards, so he's actually he's got 4 and 5 on the other side, but
Yeah.
he's about 15 inches
Oops.
wide, and great eating. I've already eaten him several times, and
Nice.
that's nice. But
Hmm.
had a pretty nice mountain man beard going on there, so.
Yeah, he did. Well done, sir. Well done. No, I think that's a great looking deer. Great
Yeah,
looking
no,
deer.
he's
And a
he's
good
he's
story to
fine.
go with it.
I mean, under the
Yeah.
circumstances, like, honestly, that's one of the smallest bucks that I've ever killed. But under the circumstances, I was very, very happy to get that buck.
Yeah.
So, this is here's a picture. I took a nice selfie with the rest of the group. They were off on a big hunt. You can't see them from where from where I was, but they're like
Oh,
up in
man.
the like that dark line of trees right in the center of that big ridge. They were right at the base of that, working their way around, and
Oh,
it just
nice.
just jumped some deer right in the base of there, and
Very
uh
cool.
pretty awesome. So they were over there, and then I was just watching in the binoculars kind of their progress, um and then I spotted, like, I looked on this ridge, and they had walked within probably 200 yards of this big bull elk just laying under a tree. And they didn't have any idea. Like, the bull saw them, but they didn't have any idea that they were anywhere close to a big bull elk. And it was in an area that you would never expect a bull elk to just be laying out in the open, basically.
Yeah.
And so I was about 600 yards away from this elk, and he didn't care at all that I was there. And so I'm just like standing up against this fence, like looking through my binoculars, and then I took some pictures through my binoculars with my phone. And
Oh,
um
nice.
I mean, he was a nice 6 point, like, really, really just a good 6 point bull. But none of us had elk tags that we could get that
Yeah.
bull, and I didn't know anybody with an elk tag. So this is one of those things, like, if I'd have known somebody with a tag, we could have called them, and they could have come out
I'm like,
and
hey,
got an elk
want to
pretty
shoot one
much
real
as
quick?
easy as you could ever get. But
Oh
so then
man.
we got back, and they they got back to the pickup, and we drove up the road a little bit because we had like 15 minutes of legal shooting light left. And So we're just trying to see if something was going to come down to the road, basically. And we were right on a main county road. Like, we shouldn't have even seen any animals, but sure enough, we come around a corner and there's a couple white-tailed does, and like, so that was pretty cool, and we just
Yeah.
seen this elk, and I had a grouse walk right up to me, basically, a little sharp-tailed grouse by itself. Just I'm standing there like watching this elk, and I heard this grouse behind me, and I look over, and this thing just like walked right up within probably 15 feet of me, and just like, oh shit, and like took off. But so then
Oh,
we
that's
were
awesome.
driving back, and we stopped, and I was glassing where that bull had been laying. Because when we got back to the pickup, I looked and I could see that bull's face, but I couldn't see any of its antlers, and I couldn't see any of the rest of that body. When
Yeah.
we left, and then we drove up the road and we came back, and so we stopped, and I was looking to see if he was still laying under that tree, and he wasn't there. And so I'm like, oh, well, maybe we'll see him. So we come around a corner, and sure enough, he's coming down from the hill he was laying on to the hayfields right below where he was. And because it's getting dark, and that's what all the animals in that country do. They go down into the hayfields in the evening and eat all the leftover, grass from the hay, and then all the water is concentrated pretty much along where the hayfields are, and pretty much all the water in that country is owned privately, and then that's where
Oh,
the hay
wow.
is grown. And so you can pretty much figure out animal movement based on that kind of principle. So, but
Hmm.
we were able to get a really nice skyline picture of that bull. um,
Oh, wow. Very cool.
yeah.
Holy cow.
Yep, that was,
Wow. You get some great photos
yeah,
out there, man. You really, really do.
yeah, for
I
sure.
still have that. I still have that print that you made for me. It's just,
Yeah.
I thought it was like a professional shot. I was like, why is he giving me this photo? And then you told me that you had actually taken it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's that
no,
giant 40-inch buck, that
yeah.
monster.
Yes,
Absolute
sir.
monster. So that
Yes,
was pretty
sir.
cool. And then I think Friday my uncle killed a pretty nice buck. This is my
Nice.
dad's youngest brother, Norm. Um when my dad passed away, Norm and I like started texting each other all the time, and we text pretty much every single day. And
Oh, wow.
he's such a cool dude, and he's in his early 70s, and but he killed a pretty nice buck. And
Oh, wow. Very
yeah,
nice.
yeah,
Man. How
which
many guys were at camp this year?
where we were, I mean, there was a couple groups. Like, there was my dad's friends from northern Wisconsin.
Mhm.
They came out, and then like their son and his friends, and they were camped in one area, and I think there was eight eight in that group. We met up with them a few times. We didn't hunt with them, but then we we had six of us to start, and then five. Reggie's nephew had to go back to school, so his sister took him back to school, and then she came back and hunted with us the last couple of days. So yeah,
Nice.
it was a good group, man. We had a like everything went perfectly on this hunt except the weather, and that kind of screwed everything. So, but
Mhm.
the food was amazing. Like, the camping was tremendous. Like, no trucks broke down. We didn't get stuck. Like, I mean, everything that was like we could control was good. Everything that was
Yeah.
under our control was perfect this year. It's just the weather sucked, and that delayed the rut, and then, we just couldn't get into. Had it been frozen, we could have got into the high country, which is where the big bucks were hanging out. The big bucks don't
Yeah.
come down from that high country until the rut's on. And so if you can't get up there, you're just not going to see them. And that's
Yeah.
that's pretty much how it was. Like,
Yeah.
and that's part of the deal, man. You just never
Hey, that's hunting.
the
Yep.
best laid plans. Like, so then Friday evening, I sent them back into the area we had hunted the very first morning, and I told them, like, park right here. You'll be able to get to there. Don't try to go any further because you'll get stuck, and that will be it. And then walk up here and just wait. And those deer are going to come down to this hay fields, and you should have a chance on something. And then me and Reggie stayed in camp and boned out my deer and got all the meat, in bags and in the cooler and stuff, so I could head out early the next morning. And then right before dark, Tim ended up shooting a little spike, which
there you go.
they were happy. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, under the circumstances, like that was great. So, and
Good.
we saw a lot
Good.
of great stuff. We saw some great country, saw some awesome animals. We saw a herd of about 150 elk one evening along the
Wow.
river on some private land. And then a couple miles further down, we saw like 8 big bull elk just by themselves, and they were only like 300 yards off the road maybe, and that was really cool.
Wow.
Like, they were big bulls. And saw lots and lots of deer, and just
Hmm.
saw some big whitetail bucks a couple different times. And yeah, just
Hmm. Yeah.
wasn't
So is
ideal,
yeah,
but that's the way it goes.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, is the private land out there, is a lot of it ranch land?
Yeah, it's all pretty much ranch land. So where we are, annual precipitation is about 14 inches. So it's like considered semi-arid desert.
Mm-hmm.
So the carrying capacity is super, super low. So that's why everything is so big. Like, the country's so big, and the ranches are so big, and the public land is so big, because it takes that amount of land to raise cows, to raise deer. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can have a chunk of land that's many square miles, and there's, not even a resident population of more than 10 deer, you know?
Wow.
So it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, so you kind of have to know, like, where the deer are traveling and where they're going to hole up, and what the bucks are looking for, and kind of just years of hunting. Like, I can pretty well think of, well, this looks like a good spot. We can, if we hike back in here, we get up on this ridge, we can look down, and I
Yeah.
bet you we'll come across something, and we just couldn't get into any of those types of areas. And it's the way it goes, man. Like,
Yeah. But hey,
but
you guys got a
yeah,
couple down in camp, had a great experience,
yeah,
and
for sure.
hey, sounds like a big win.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they'll come back again, and that's
Yeah.
that's great. So, to
Yeah.
continue the legacy, and like, my dad's favorite thing always was teaching new people how to hunt. Like, that was his most favorite thing to do ever, is introduce people to hunting mule deer. And so to be able to carry on that legacy, like, that's a huge thing for me. And I love it. I love bringing new people out. Like, I really, I've been trying to get you to come out for years. And
Yeah.
and I don't even think you should put in for a tag. I think you should just come out, just come
Yeah.
hunting with us. Like,
Just
just
come to camp.
come for the week. Just have
Yeah.
a great week of hunting with us. And you know, like, gun hunting isn't your thing, so I mean, that's fine. Like, but if you want, like, get a tag too. Like, I've got,
Yeah.
in this case right here, I've got probably 6 different hunting rifles. So, you know,
Yep.
we can pull out one of my dad's old rifles, and you
There
know,
you go.
but
Uh,
I really want you to come out in the next couple of years, if you can swing it. So
Yeah. No, it needs to happen.
even if it's just to come along, like I just,
Yeah.
you need to come see this too. You need to
Yeah.
come see this. And it's one of those things like without having the intimate local knowledge that I have, like it would be so impossible for you to just come out and try to figure out this country,
Hey,
and
I know how that
I mean that's
goes.
it. Like it's such a difficult
Yeah,
thing to try to do,
I
and
do.
so,
I do.
you know, but it needs to happen. It really needs to happen. So hopefully in the next couple of
Absolutely.
years I can get you out here and
Yeah,
know, hang out
that would
around
be
a
neat.
campfire and
Yeah. We
cover
need to
some
get
country.
all the Wisconsin guys, me, Jerome, Dirty Joe,
Yep,
road trip it out there
yep,
and
yep.
make a week of it. Yeah,
Well,
we
that's,
need to.
easily
Yeah,
at least two of you.
yeah.
I don't know about all three. That might be
I don't know.
insanity.
I don't
I don't
know
know
if
if you
your
guys
camp
will
can
make
handle
it.
that.
I
Oh,
don't know if all three of you would make it. So
that's probably a good point.
just
Probably a
getting to
good point.
camp. So,
Oh man, I
but
love it.
yeah,
I love it.
yeah, no, for sure. It'd be pretty tremendous to have
It
you
would.
guys in camp, and
It
you
would.
know, Jerome's about to have another baby here pretty quick, so
Yeah.
they're
He'll
like
be locked
she's
down for a little bit.
yeah, yeah, another couple years probably on him. So
Yeah.
Joel might come out next year. Just depends
Nice.
on. I mean, he's planning on putting in. It's just it's a lottery drawing. So if he
Yeah.
draws, that's a tremendous thing, and
Yeah.
um, so we can kind of play it by ear, but just
Yeah.
sliding it in there like
There you go. Yeah.
I want you to come see my country, man.
Needs to be done. I
Hmm.
agree. I agree.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
So
super,
I
man.
think we're gonna wrap it here, and I
Yeah.
just want to show you one more picture here. So this there's this rock that my dad loved so much, and it's right on this main county road. Um, and every time we would drive past it, every single time, my dad's like, God, I wish I could just back my truck up and bring that home. Like it's just such a cool rock, and I mean it's absolutely enormous. And so this is this cool just rock outcrop that has been sitting there the same way for who knows how many
Wow.
thousands and thousands of years, and doesn't seem like
Yeah.
it should still be there. I mean, there's nothing, doesn't look like
Yeah.
there's anything, holding it there. And um but it's probably, I don't know, probably 15 feet tall and
Oh,
many,
wow.
many, 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 many thousands of pounds. But so that's always like, that's dad's rock. And
That's neat.
that was cool. I took a good picture of it and sent it to my sister because she ended up not being able to come hunting with us at the last minute.
Oh, it
She's
stinks.
gonna have to have pretty major back surgery here
Oh,
pretty quick.
yikes.
So she was really,
Yowzers.
really bummed, and you know, put in all this time and effort and got all this new gear, has her own rifle for the first time ever, and
Yeah. That you
you know,
built.
yeah, yeah,
You
exactly.
know?
And um and then she couldn't even go, and
Oh, man.
she's
That
just,
stinks.
devastated obviously. But I was like, I don't care if you miss this year, like come next year, come the year
Yeah.
after, come for the rest of your life, like, but if you can't function as a human being, like
Right.
what kind of a life is that? So
Yeah. Yeah,
she's
you
gonna
got to
have
do
to
it.
have some. She has rheumatoid arthritis, and it's just degenerating all sorts of stuff in her spine, and just
Oh,
not a good
man.
thing. So
No.
that was tough. So I sent her as many pictures as I could, and kept her
Yeah.
updated. I'm like, well, this is the year to not be able to come hunting because the hunting is terrible. So you know,
Yep. You nailed it.
at
Nailed it.
least if you can't be here, this is the one to not be here. So.
Yep.
But
Oh
no,
man.
it's still great. I mean, it's still great to get out there. It's still great to go to these places. We went and placed a stone where we spread my dad's ashes, and my uncle Norm had carved his name and life dates into a stone, and we went and placed that next to a tree and overlooking some pretty awesome country, and
Very
so
cool.
that was really cool, and just
Nice.
you know, it was a great trip. Just
Yeah.
it's always disappointing when it doesn't go the way you think, and I have super high expectations for myself anyway, so
Yeah.
to not be like, I mean, it's all self-imposed stupid shit, but like
Yep.
I'm a perfectionist, so it's hard to not be perfect.
Right. No.
You know?
Understandable. Understandable. It's hard to not be perfect.
That's
Oh, Montana.
how
Yep.
I roll. So.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is.
All
Oh
right, brother.
man.
Thank you
Well,
so much
hey.
for joining me, and hopefully we'll get you on here again pretty soon. So
No, I appreciate the invitation,
because
and
this is
it's been such a neat series. You know, I got the pleasure to meet your dad a couple times, and got to cook for him and share more than one meal with him. And you know, I've always admired those strong, quiet men that you just know have so much knowledge, but they have such a gentle way almost of letting it out, which it
yeah,
just
yep,
it just makes the message and that much more special in my opinion. And he was definitely that type of person.
yeah,
And you know, I was lucky to get to meet him, and you know, after hearing so many stories and now getting to know him even more through your podcast has just
yeah,
been it's just like, oh, you just wish you had more time. You know, me especially, I
for
was like, man, I
sure.
wish I got to hunt with him more and hear more of this, because I mean,
Yeah,
I got the 5 minute elevator speech compared to everything
yeah,
else, and it's just
yeah,
it's so neat to see how this series has brought so much of that back. And to
yeah,
those of us that didn't get a chance to get to know him,
yep,
it's pretty neat now to get to know him through you guys and your experiences. So
yeah, for sure.
thanks for what you do, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep.
It's such an honor to be able to shine a little light on him and what he did and how he changed people's lives, and through this one thing, this one little thing that he loved to do, and
Yeah,
not even counting all the other things, but just what he was able to do and change people's lives through hunting is pretty spectacular. So
indeed.
pretty awesome. All right, brother. I
Yep.
miss you. Love
Hey, I
you.
miss you too, man. Love you
Great
too,
to
buddy.
see
Have a
you.
great night.
All right,
Yep.
man. We'll
We'll
talk
talk soon.
soon. All right, brother. See ya.